Hi, this is Pastor Dan Blosser, and I'm excited to have a conversation with our new ministry resident, Hutson Hohlbein. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
I want to talk a little bit about the ministry residency at Upland Community Church and explain your involvement in it. This is a program that our former lead pastor, Mark Beal, brought to Upland Community Church from a residency that he participated in at College Church in Wheaton. So you are the third to do our ministry residency here. And what that means is that you work with us and get some in-house mentoring, kind of the cathedral model to pastoral education through modeling and mentoring. But also you do some work, kind of get your feet wet in the local church, teaching, doing some other ministry opportunities, running events, etc. Historically, our residency has also had another third, which is educational. And our denomination, the Fellowship of Evangelical Churches, actually has a certificate program in theology that helps people do distance learning and work their way through some credits towards theological education. Our previous residents have chosen to do that, but we've structured your residency slightly differently. We'll talk about that later. Let's kind of pin that and come back to it. But you are our third ministry resident. Before we've had Everett Pollard and Caleb Rolling, and they've done a wonderful job for us, and we're excited to have you on staff. This morning, I thought it'd be fun to just ask some get-to-know-you questions and kind of introduce you more broadly to people who don't know you very well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, you start with where are you from, how you came to Taylor, what you're doing now with Taylor, and just kind of go on for a little bit, and then maybe I'll think of some more questions to ask you.
Yeah, fantastic. So I am from Adrian, Michigan, southeast corner of the state, kind of tucked between Toledo, Ohio, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. I am the youngest of three boys, and so we were a very active bunch. We played all the sports. We're trying to engage our communities, both neighborhood and at school, as much as we could. Student council, honor society, all those things. We started in public schooling and finished in private schooling. And there's a decent age gap between myself and my older brothers. They both attended Christian universities in Indiana. So my oldest brother played baseball at Huntington University, and the middle went to Taylor University and played football at Taylor. And in classic youngest child fashion, I desired to rebel and not follow suit and try to go and do something else completely different, completely separate. But God has a funny way of bringing His plan about. And so late into my senior year, for those who are kind of aware of how recruiting works, I was late into my senior season of basketball, which is a very, very important kind of moment in the recruiting time. COVID hit and ended the season. And so I was kind of left with the offers that I did have, and just trying to figure out what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And it was actually in that time that God really formed my heart, starting to change my desires and what I wanted for a school. Probably used the constant and subtle comments of my brothers as they were back in our household, which, I mean, that's a side conversation. Like, COVID is such an interesting time. Like, my family would have never been together like that in that way. But we all moved back to the same house for a couple months, and just a fascinating time of life. Anyways, jumping back into the story. So the Lord was really working on me in that time, and I began to realize I wanted to go to a school that I knew I was going to grow in my relationship with Christ. I knew that there was more formation that needed to happen as I was wrestling through a little bit of identity shift. Like, oh, this sport was just stripped from me. Like, maybe I should not have put all my eggs in these kinds of baskets. And, I no longer am in class, and, how do I deal with these things? So I realized that I wanted to grow in my relationship with Christ, and there was a lot more learning to be done there. I also learned that I wanted to go to a school that I knew I was going to walk away with lifelong friends, a place that was going to place me in good community, and people that were like-minded and chasing after similar things. And I also wanted to go to a school where I knew the degree was going to hold some value and really mean something. And so it completely shifted my trajectory and what I was looking for. I went from looking for schools that purely offered me a spot on their roster to looking to a school for those three things. And so my list totally changed, and I was starting to look at places like Taylor. Fast forward a couple months, it got down to the last day that I was going to. I told my parents, and we had agreed that I was going to make my college decision by. It got down to that final day. I woke up not knowing where I was going to go, and this day was an extreme faith builder. I mean, you talk about Ebenezer's. People on campus talk about Ebenezer's frequently. This for me was like a huge Ebenezer, a thing that I go back to often, thinking about the ways that the Lord showed himself faithful. That afternoon, getting into the evening, I received a call from the then head coach at Taylor University for football, Ron Korfmacher, and he said, "Hutson, we've talked as a staff and we've decided to match your academic scholarship here at Taylor with your athletic scholarship." And it was just a very clear sign, like, Lord, this is what my parents and I have been praying for. This is clearly a sign. God, that I did not want to follow my brother here and, quote unquote, live in his shadow. And probably all the younger siblings out there can resonate with that. But I trusted and decided to move forward and told Coach Korfmacher, like, I'm all in. Let's do it.
Okay.
And so that took me to Taylor. So I remember getting to Taylor and feeling very uncertain about, is this where I need to be? Even though the Lord had already led me through that whole process, I was still questioning, I think, a little bit in my heart. But it did not take long for me to realize that Taylor was a great place for me to grow and develop and where I needed to be. And so I'll fast forward a little bit through the college years and just talk a little bit about what I'm doing now. So the college ministry, the ministry residency here at UCC. But I am still slightly involved with Taylor. So I'm still playing football at Taylor. I'm using my COVID season.
So you've graduated from Taylor or not yet?
I've walked.
Okay.
I've walked at Taylor, but I am still technically an undergraduate student this fall.
So this is your fifth fall.
This is my fifth fall. So using my COVID season of football. So when I came in as a freshman, the NAIA, the athletic institution that Taylor's a part of, they granted every athlete of that 2020 season an extra year of eligibility.
Okay.
And so I'm using that season of eligibility to play this fall. I'm taking one credit.
And what is this class?
You had to ask.
I did, of course.
I'm taking participation in drawing, which,
Excellent.
people chuckle at, but we could get into this if we wanted to.
We should. I can't draw to save my life. I wish I had a drawing class.
This class is actually incredibly beautiful, and this is why I love the Christian liberal arts.
Okay.
We have talked now. We've only met 3 times, but I think every class we have talked about how the art of drawing, the skill of drawing, is not so much what you're doing with your pencil and your pen on the page. It is more so sharpening your ability to see God's creation.
Beautiful.
And seeing the world around you and the intricacy in which God has formed this world.
I don't think that's anything to laugh at.
Not at all.
You're taking one class and you're playing football.
Yes.
And you are doing this ministry residency. I think it'd be helpful to hear what you studied what was your major?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied We call it PPE at Taylor, and it's not personal protective equipment. It is political science, philosophy, and economics. And then I had
Okay.
a minor in intercultural studies and missions.
Sounds hard. Was it hard?
Oh, there were definitely some hard days, some long nights, but well worth it. Very thankful for the academic formation I received at Taylor. I mean, I just referenced it, but the Christian liberal arts is beautiful, and uh, it's hard to put into words the gratitude I feel for receiving that level of education. I knew that there was more out there to learn about my faith, but to step into my freshman year and realize my faith isn't just meant for Sundays, it affects every aspect of life.
Beautiful.
Jesus, the Logos, the Word, like
Hmm.
his. We talk often about God's all truth is God's truth at Taylor, and just see how that truth permeates through every field, every study. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful, especially if you're like passionate about one particular study and seeing how the truth of the gospel comes through in really real ways, like applicable ways.
It's tremendous.
It's tremendous.
It's tremendous.
It's tremendous.
Tell us a little bit about how Taylor football is used to do Christian formation.
That's a great question. So during my time at Taylor, I have been under two different coaching staffs, or I should say two different head coaches, with a lot of coaches who have been in and out in those years. So different position coaches, different strength and conditioning coaches, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of just the culture of college football. There's a lot of turnover and change, but two different head coaches. But much of the spiritual formation, the culture of our spiritual formation has remained the same since I've been at Taylor. It's very player led. It is a culture of discipleship, of upperclassmen investing into underclassmen, and that's the same. You'll find the same thing pretty much in every other area of Taylor, like especially residence life. Like Taylor really pushes for seniors through freshmen to be living together. The football team takes a very similar approach. We want our upperclassmen to be eating meals with our freshmen, to be spending social time with our freshmen, like et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the core of spiritual formation, and just like having those conversations, having those discussions, having those moments of worship together at chapel, at team chapels, etc. That's the core of spiritual formation at Taylor football. Now, there is structure that we have built into it, especially with the newer coaching staff. We have these things called servant leadership teams, or SLT for short. And so there are different leaders within the program who are assigned an SLT, a team. And so we have 12, 13 leaders that are voted for, nominated, and then
So are these like your traditional captains, or?
these are traditional captains. It didn't always used to be that case, but now these are our captains.
Okay.
And so these captains will have a group of guys underneath them. The number can range, but it's typically around like 6 to 8 guys or so. And these there's a lot of freedom given to the captain how they want to form and shape their group. But at a bare minimum, we'll have, it's typically weekly. Sometimes it's a little more sporadic, but typically weekly meetings given to us by our coach after a practice or after a lift, where we can just spend like 5 minutes with our team just asking, hey, how are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need prayer for anything?
Mm-hmm.
What's like the biggest thing going on in your life right now? What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest praises? So that's like the bare minimum. But like I said, guys are given a lot of freedom to lead in other ways. I've known guys who've done Bible studies. I know guys who do like lunch meetings with their SLTs. There's just a lot of room for what the group needs, and it's interesting. Like the way that some of the groups pan out, there's varying levels of spiritual maturity. There's
Mm-hmm.
guys who have been around the program a long time, and they happen to all be in the same group, and so they end up being a little bit more of a model SLT for the other groups to follow. Then there's others who are brand new to their faith,
Hmm.
and so they're like just jumping into what does it mean to be a Christian. So it's really quite beautiful.
So are
Yeah.
you currently in one of these roles?
I am. I lead a group of, I believe we have 8 guys, including myself, and we actually don't have any freshmen. So it's been interesting, but it's been an absolute joy. We've actually set a theme for our group this year. The theme is "Get To," and that's just kind of bouncing off of an idea of a basketball coach at, I believe it was. I want to get this right. I'm pretty sure it was UConn. I think it was University of Connecticut. But he brought his team through this, and it's really just a posture of gratitude, understanding like getting to play a sport is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a chore. It is not a job, like so many of our peer athletes, student athletes, think and feel. Um, but it's a gift that we get to just go out and enjoy on a daily basis with teammates that we love and care for coaches that we want to that we respect and want to perform well for, and most importantly, for God that has given us these abilities.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah, that's been the theme we've been working through. It's been a lot of fun.
So
Yeah.
you've mentioned Coach Korfmacher as being the previous
Mm-hmm.
coach. Had a beautiful tenure there at Taylor, discipling a lot of men.
Mm.
Who's the current head coach?
Current head coach is Aaron Mingo. Aaron Mingo previously served as an offensive coordinator at Dordt University
Okay.
over in Iowa. Yeah.
And is he influential in kind of setting the spiritual tone for using
Oh,
football in this way?
absolutely. I want to pause and make sure I communicate this with enough heart and clarity. Taylor University did a fantastic job in hiring Coach Mingo. I can't think of a better Taylor fit. The way I keep coming back to the Christian liberal arts. Like,
Good.
the way that he brings football or approaches football fits totally in the mold of the Christian liberal arts.
Hmm.
We have 4 pillars in the program, and this all comes from Coach Mingo and his leadership. God glorifying. We want everything that we do as a program, whether it's the way that we carry ourselves on campus, and the way that we interact in the classroom, on the field, etc. We want it to be God glorifying first and foremost. Second, we want to be holistically developed, and so Coach Mingo is very keen on ensuring that we didn't just come to Taylor to play football.
Hmm.
There's so much more to life,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of different things that we do within the program to build that holistic development. We have team chapels, so we get a spiritual component. Obviously, there's like the athletic component and body development, physical development. We have study tables for our team for guys going through different courses. They can get some tutoring. So there's like the academic component. And then we get to do fun things too. I mean, we do team bowling, like social life. Being a part of a roster of like 100 guys is a unique thing. I would highly recommend it if anyone gets the chance. And so, yeah, holistic development's second pillar. The third pillar is competitive excellence. Coach Mingo and the rest of the program, we believe very strongly that God has called us to be excellent in what we do, to pursue our craft with intensity and ferociousness, not in a way that is arrogant or boastful, but in a way that is respectful and humble and honors our opponent.
Good.
But is all pointing back to that first pillar of we want to glorify God in the way that we do what we've been called to do,
Sure.
at least for this season.
Sure.
And then finally, the last pillar is kingdom impact.
Okay.
And so we have a missional pillar to our team. We recognize that as football players, we're given a sense of leadership and clout, if you will, on campus that people look up to football players. And so we want to steward that
Steward that
responsibility well,
influence.
steward that influence, absolutely.
Mm.
And so I think going through the 4 pillars is probably the best way to start to grasp at Coach Mingo's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It paints a great picture of where he's trying to take this program and where this program is going. I've seen so much change in my going on 5 years at Taylor, of just seeing how more and more every day this team is starting to look like that picture that Coach Mingo is trying to put together.
So he hasn't been here that long, but you're starting to see development.
Yes, this is his 4th season with
season.
the Trojans, and I mean, when he first got to Taylor, things were not always easy. I mean, I think I had teammates who thought we have a new coach and we're going to have an undefeated season. That's an extreme, but just to try to help explain.
Sure.
It has been so gratifying to see the slow, steady progress. I mean, you think of a sculptor who's just slowly, intricately working on a rock. We actually use that analogy often in the program of like pounding a rock, and it takes a long time for it to break, but eventually it starts to split. And so it has been a long process. Like, there was not immediate change. There were a lot of things that had to take place in order for us to get where we are now. And there always will be room to progress and get better. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that helps. I think a lot of us aren't super aware of the program, and it's nice to have an insider give perspective, particularly from a leadership standpoint. You've been there now. This will be your 5th season, so and I've heard it's off to a good start. So
it is.
God bless y'all.
Praise God.
So what other leadership opportunities have you had there during your time at Taylor, Hutson?
Yeah, I've had a couple. 2 that are most noteworthy would first being a PA or an RA. We call it a PA, personnel assistant at Taylor, residential assistant. And then a presidential fellow. I got to serve in the presidential fellowship this past school year.
So a lot of us don't know what that is. That's new to President Lindsay. So you want to describe it a little bit for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the presidential fellowship is a program that is modeled after the White House Fellowship. It is something that President Lindsay began to workshop at Gordon when he was the president at Gordon College. And so the form that it has taken on at Taylor bears a lot of resemblances to the one in the White House, where you'll have different people who are in different key leadership roles, and then they will place a cohort of students underneath them. So it takes a different shape based on the cohort, but for simple terms, you might have one person under the president, one person under the COO, one person under the CIO, and it just kind of goes down the line. For my situation, I was underneath President Lindsay with one other student. So we had 2 in that office. There were 2 fellows who worked under Reverend Greg Dyson in the pastoral office. So yeah, it kind of shifts and changes based on your cohort and the students that they want to take on. But the cohort can typically range from somewhere between like 8 to 12 students. It is not limited to seniors. It is open to anybody. Fairly merit based. They want to take a good look at your resume and how have you done in the classroom, other leadership positions that you've held on campus or elsewhere. It is a pretty exhaustive interview process, and I'm not at liberty to talk much about that. But it has certainly prepared me well for other positions outside of Taylor. I'm very, very thankful for the experience.
So what were some of your duties or responsibilities? Is it mostly mentoring? Are you working pretty hard? How does it?
The fellowship has some pillars that it is grounded in. Mentorship is a big one, and so being mentored by your principal, whoever you're serving under, is a big component. But another big component is legitimate work. Presidential fellowship. I think one of the biggest things that I learned from the presidential fellowship was literally just figuring it out. You got to figure it out. You're given a task, you're given an assignment, and you just got to do it. You got to figure out a way to do it.
Can you give us an
it's a real world.
example?
Yeah.
Of
So
what
one
that would look like?
example was I had the opportunity to work on some of the language to the grant proposal we submitted to the Lilly Foundation for the Main Street Mile Initiative.
All right, let's stop you there just for a second.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in that
What
sentence.
is the Main Street Mile Initiative? Briefly.
Yeah, briefly. The Main Street Mile Initiative is something that Taylor has really driven in the last few years to try to bridge relationship and establish a entrepreneurial energy in Upland. So the key component of the Main Street Mile Initiative is a whole makeover revamp of Main Street that runs from Taylor, the front entrance of campus, all the way down through downtown Upland. And so they're redoing the road. They're adding cleaner, nicer, wider sidewalks from campus down to downtown Upland. They're seeking investors and entrepreneurs to bring business into downtown Upland, adding a collegiate inn for like another hotel option sort of thing, restaurants, etc. So there's just a lot of time, energy, money, and really like just passion and heart for the community being poured into this initiative, this Main Street Mile Initiative, to see the community flourish as a whole, not just Taylor University in its own little bubble, but to really see the whole neighborhood take a step up.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
So you got to work on some of the grant language.
Yeah, the grant proposal. So in an effort to get this initiative going, Taylor was seeking out a competitive grant, $30 million grant from the Lilly Endowment. They're based out of Indianapolis. And so there are multiple Indiana schools applying for this grant, very competitive to see if, they can secure this money for, a community upgrade. And by God's grace, Taylor was able to secure it, and actually were given extra $3 million in addition to what the set line was at $30 million. They so liked our proposal that they thought we'll just throw in a few more.
Fantastic.
So it really was a huge answer to prayer in a lot of ways, and it was very special to be a part of that in the office. And I remember it very clearly. It's one of the most memorable days in my fellowship, seeing President Lindsay take the call and, getting the news, like, we got it. We got it. The hard work paid off.
Very cool.
So it was very special. So the part that I played in it, I briefly mentioned, it was some of the language in the grant proposal. I wrote a little bit about the benefits of collegiate inns or hotels and the role that they can play in a small town community, how it affects the economy, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. So that's an example of the kind of task that you would do. So some writing, were there other types of tasks?
Yeah, one of many. So it does differ. You can probably already tell, but it differs based on the presidential fellow. So, my work was very different than the fellows who were working under Reverend Dyson or, the fellow who's working under our chief of operations or anything like that. So, yeah, the work is specific to the leader. As you might imagine, the president has their hands in many different things on campus. And so my work reflected that. I had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. So, I mentioned the Lilly Endowment is one of the things I was able to be involved in. I was often running around with President Lindsay for like his day-to-day schedule. So I might do email with him or help him take a call or maybe do some driving with him to and from an airport. A lot of the other work that I got to do kind of centered around hospitality, I think is a good general word to give it. We often would have like presidential guests or campus guests visit. And so maybe I'd spend some time with them while they're in between meetings at Taylor or drive them from the airport. So yeah, a lot of hospitality interwoven with the work too.
Would you recommend the program to somebody who's interested?
Absolutely, I would recommend the program. It is demanding though, and I would encourage a lot of preparation and prayer and being sure you are ready to step into the role. It will prepare you well for future leadership. I think it'll prepare you well for even the next stage of life as many of these people are, young adults stepping into a new career. Like I feel so well equipped to step into an office space with coworkers. And so there are numerous benefits. But it does take on a different dynamic on campus. I mean, you are working a job at the same time as being a student, like a serious institutional job that does carry some value. Um, so I would say yes. I encourage you to do it. Encourage you to apply, but with some
Thoughtfully
caution.
and
Yeah,
prayerfully.
with some
Good.
caution.
Good.
Yeah, thoughtfully and prayerfully.
So I guess you also, in a previous year, had an internship at Samaritan's Purse. Can
I
you tell us a little
did.
bit about
I
that?
did. Yeah. Yeah, I would love
Where
to.
is that? What is that?
Samaritan's Purse is a nonprofit humanitarian aid organization uh, based out of Boone, North Carolina. It flows out of kind of the Billy Graham tradition and heritage. It is currently led by Franklin Graham, so Billy Graham's son, and they have many different departments that serve a wide variety of needs around the world. Really, people know them best for Operation Christmas Child, which is a very like fun department to go see. Like if you ever get the opportunity to go to North Carolina, like go take one of their Operation Christmas Child tours. It is very very special. Operation Christmas Child is this nationwide movement, and actually other parts of the world too, that collects shoe boxes around Christmas time, uh, stuffed with different gifts, presents. Sometimes like people will put like hygiene things in there, like toothbrushes and mouthwash. And they get sent all over the world to kids who may not get anything for Christmas, kids who are maybe in a low income part of their country. And so Samaritan's Purse sends these boxes out. These kids get them on Christmas morning. And you can look up the videos too. They're pretty spectacular. But really, the greatest thing that comes with these boxes is the hope of the gospel. There's a whole course, there's a whole class that comes along with the giving of these gifts, where after these gifts are given, there's a multi-week, I want to say multi-month uh, program that these students or these kids will go through to learn more about Jesus Christ. And so it's really not just the physical, like tangible objects that is so special about this giving, but really like the hope of the gospel that comes with that gift. It's really special. I'd totally encourage you to check it out. So most people know Samaritan's Purse from that, but they really do so much more. There's another well-known department called North American Ministries, for natural disasters that happen in North America and the United States. They have on the ground crew who will go and serve. They've got axes and chainsaws, and they'll go and clear debris. Trees that have crushed homes from hurricanes, et cetera, et cetera. They'll like go and completely free to the residents. They'll go and clean up the mess. And so that's another well-known thing. But besides that, Samaritan's Purse has many other initiatives. They, like I mentioned, they do a lot of humanitarian aid around the world. They're still in Ukraine, distributing food. They've got multiple locations in Africa and the Middle East, doing different programming, education, sanitation. They do some water filtration. So they've got many things going on over there, and it's a very fun culture to be a part of. I can speak briefly to what I did there. I was hired on as an international security intern.
Ooh.
Sounds really cool. Yeah, really, really fancy. It was really cool. It was a great opportunity. So my role was kind of twofold. One half of it was security training. The other half was we use the acronym GSOC. It's Global Security Operations Center. And so on the security training side, Samaritan's Purse has some policies in place that if they have any international workers, anyone within the SP umbrella that is going to travel internationally for them, they have to go through security training. And so I had the opportunity to work with the different guys who led the security training for Samaritan's Purse. So a lot of it was, being aware of your surroundings. How do you work together in a team when you're in a dangerous situation or a bad part of town? What are just like good industry know-hows going into, tricky situations. It's important to know, the holidays of the country you're going to, the cultural norms, et cetera, et cetera. And so had the opportunity to do a lot of hands-on training, teaching, even some scenarios I'd get to lead or be an actor in, which is pretty fun. And so, yeah, that was really, really, really great experience. And actually, with that specific team, the security training team, I got to travel to Ethiopia for roughly 2 to 2.5 weeks. That was my first ever international experience. So if we want to talk about that more, we totally can. But phenomenal, phenomenal experience. And then so the other half that I previously mentioned of the work was GSOC, Global Security Operations Center. Samaritan's Purse does a great job of caring for their employees when they're abroad. They keep track of them. They want to know where they are, how they're doing, what are the updates. And so I got to do some research when I was with GSOC. We had a team who was going to be traveling to a pretty dangerous country. And so I did some research on the need to knows for the city that they were going to. What are the biggest threats to kind of the task list that we had going into the country for that specific team, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very research based on that side of the work.
Okay.
But a lot of fun too. Just wonderful, wonderful people to work with. People who really want to see the gospel go out in both word and deed, which is really special to be a part of.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of opportunities to travel abroad while you were at Taylor as well.
I did. So through Taylor, my first abroad experience was in the Basque Country of Spain, and that was a life-changing experience. I was taking a course through Taylor, Contemporary Christian Belief, often abbreviated Contemp at Taylor.
Who was your professor?
My professor was the beloved Dr. Brad Seaman. So thankful for his ministry and his heart for students. But him and then his wife actually got to travel with us, and it was a wonderful class. So first one was Spain. Second one was Athens, Greece. And that was not a class really as much. I actually got the chance to co-lead that trip. That wasn't as a student. I got to co-lead the trip to Athens, Greece, and that was more missions focused, although Spain was also very missions focused. So I don't want to neglect that. But we were hands-on working with impoverished communities and refugee communities in Athens. So not as much classroom work for that trip. Yeah.
Good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your testimony when you became a believer? What were the circumstances?
I'd love to tell the story. So I grew up in a Christian household, independent Baptist church, small town, small congregation, and I was by far one of very few youth. It was a very old congregation.
Just your older brothers? Is that it?
It was pretty much my brothers, and then the pastor's children.
Okay.
The pastor's children, and then a handful of other children. But mostly elderly congregation. I'm actually very thankful for that. As I I'm sure if my parents were in here, they'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, we remember you grumbling, complaining about not having any friends at church." But when I look back now, I see the value of, the intergenerational faith.
Absolutely.
Having the gray beards all the way down to the children running around in the nursery. There's such hope and confidence that you can glean from seeing God's faithfulness through the different stages of life. So I grew up in that church, very thankful for it. Really gained a good grasp, I think, of solid doctrine and the reasons for my faith. However, I think I really struggled in my early years of thinking as Christianity as a kind of get out of hell free card. I think I was more scared of damnation and punishment than I was in love with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took time for my heart to grow in my love and pursuit of Christ. But that is kind of where things started. So I grow, get older. We actually decide to move our home and our school away from that location where our church was. That's a long story too. But we ended up moving about 30 minutes south to Adrian, Michigan. And we still continued to attend that church. We would drive up on Sundays. It would have been very hard for us to leave that body. And so my parents decided we would continue to go. And again, I'm thankful. But we transferred from public schooling to private schooling. And that's really where my love of learning began to grow. I did not like school very much when I was in the public school system, but I had a number of teachers at the private school who really poured into me and helped me grow a love for learning, grow a love for reading, and it really laid a foundation for my love for the Christian liberal arts, which we've talked about earlier. Beginning to see like I see Jesus in these different disciplines. Like he's there. I can start to see it.
Good.
And then high school came along. Well, in between all of this, an idolatry and an addiction to athletics was kind of festering. And so get to high school, and it's definitely become like a full-on idol at this point. And so really striving for accolades and glory on the field and on the court. And by God's grace, and it's weird to say that, but undergo a pretty serious injury my junior year. And this is kind of where everything really starts to shift in my testimony, in my life. Had a really bad ankle injury late into my junior season of basketball, which was my favorite sport, the sport I wanted to play in college. And I don't know if I've ever actually gotten to show you photos from this. I know your medical background, you'd be like, "Oh, this looks really interesting." So I'll have to show you afterwards.
It sounds great.
But my foot was pointing in the wrong direction. And I remember going to the ER and the nurses being like, "This doesn't look very good." Kind of wanted to, they didn't say this literally, but kind of want to prepare you. We don't know, what the future of your athletic career, might look like. And so, I remember being in that hospital bed just thinking my identity has completely been placed in this. I've been so wrong. I've been so wrong.
Wow.
And it was definitely a wake up call. Total wake up call. And this story hooks into kind of the story I've already told about my coming to Taylor. So I remember, we took the x-rays, and I remember the doctor coming in with just this surprised look on his face. I don't know how this happened. I don't know what's going on here. But he said, there are no broken bones in your foot. We just think it's a dislocation. So we're going to put you out and just pop this thing back in. And I said, okay, give me more pain meds. Sounds good. And so, I wake up and start my road to recovery. which did not take very long.
Wow.
Surprisingly. I was actually back the following fall for my senior season of football, which, if you kind of follow the trail, I was able to get a offer for football, which was totally, again, like a God thing. And I end up at Taylor. And it was like,
Wow.
If this injury didn't happen, I don't know where I would be in my faith, and I certainly don't know what school I would have ended up at. So yeah, I mean, once I entered that recovery process, it wasn't really just a recovery for my foot; it was a recovery for my soul. I started leaning into Scripture in ways that I had never done before, leaning into words of life, things that really nourished me, like helped me understand my identity is in Christ, not in things that I'm involved in, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the big, one of the big parts of my testimony.
It's a good word, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate hearing a little bit about your testimony and the Lord's grace in your life and your beautiful time at Taylor, which is not over yet. And we're super grateful to have you here at UCC ministering according to your gifts. And real quick, rapid fire, what's your favorite football team?
It's sad that I've hesitated.
Yeah, I'm amazed.
College football, Ohio State. Professional football, Detroit Lions.
That's okay.
Why I hesitated.
That's good. When's your birthday?
April 11th, 2002.
Favorite candy bar?
Babe Ruth bar.
All right.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Nice choice.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Hutson. We'll talk more. Bye for now.
Sounds